But Joe gave him nothing to think about. He gave
because
him...
he can't. And that's the point. Because he can't. Joyce can only do one thing.
Make some tea. You've been told before. Wait outside in the car. But the point is this: in that fight, I'm assuming you pick Joshua to win that fight. I need to ask the question?
Yeah.
Welcome to Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. This is episode 42, for those that don't speak Spanish. And also, it is the channel's birthday. So it's my birthday week, and it's the channel's birthday. Now, alongside liking and subscribing, which is very important, don't forget to keep leaving your questions in the comment section below. But also, make sure you do subscribe, because we're looking for 100,000 viewers, because our never present producer seems to get a bonus from it. Anyway, Spence, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So, happy birthday for 2 days ago.
Thank you very much.
Sorry it's late.
Yeah, gifts?
Absolutely, yeah, after the show.
Okay, fantastic. By the way, this on my chops is not Derek Chisora punching me or someone of the boxing fraternity not liking it. It's my 3-year-old son dealing with me. So if anyone thinks Jordan's got a smack in the gob, which he richly deserved, it wasn't from anyone in the boxing fraternity. Anyway, let's move on. Let's go to the fight on the weekend.
Yeah.
Both of us were at that fight. Both of us were interested to see what the changes that Joyce was going to implement, what the outcome looked like. The conventional wisdom was stacked in the favour of a repeat.
Yeah.
And whilst I think we made an argument, well, Liam Smith didn't repeat, Zhang did.
Yeah.
What did you make? What was your takeaway? What was your overall impression?
Well, I think
of the scenario with Joe.
Going back to a few
Zhang,
shows ago, Simon, I think we both agreed that it was not a good move for Joyce to go into that immediate rematch. Then you sort of come round to the idea, okay, look, he had nowhere else to go because of the landscape of the heavyweights at the moment. So it was a big gamble and a gamble that could pay off. And I think it became evident from the first bell that what did Joyce do differently to what he'd done in the first fight? Okay, he moved round to the left. He was moving away from the left hand, leaning over to one side. Well, a fighter of the caliber of Zhang works that out quite quickly, and he set that up and teed it up with a little left. And
were you surprised? I mean, obviously we all said, and we priced it into our thinking. We gave it as some form of comfort to ourselves, wanting Joyce to win, that the weight in the first fight made the difference by him going up to a weight that was more commensurate of the weights that we've seen him, albeit Joyce said to us the other day that he fought Daniel Dubois at the same weight that he fought Zhang in the first fight.
Yes.
Zhang is a lot bigger individual.
Yeah.
But we saw him go in at a significantly greater weight, nearly 2 stone. Derek Chisora said it was 2 pounds because Derek can't add up, especially when it comes to paying bets. No. But it was 2 stone.
Yeah.
He looked markedly bigger.
Yeah.
But in the fights, you saw Zhang. I mean, you and I said, and it's going to be a question here eventually. You and I said to Joe in the studio after the loss to Zhang, no, don't take this as a rematch. I'll worry about you. And Joe got all prickly about it.
He did.
Do you think that Joe at any point underestimated Zhang in both the first fight and even in his preparation for the second fight?
Well, where I'm at with this one, so interesting, Zhang's trainer, Sean George, who was a great fighter himself, effectively ended the career of Chris Bird. Yeah. He was a very, very good fighter, and he's a great trainer. After speaking to him at the press conference, he said, listen, we know Joe's going to do something different. He came in at 18 stone 2 for the first fight. He thought that mobility would get in there. Guess what? He had no feet, so we knew that. And so Zhang coming at 19 stone 8, he said, we was comfortable with that. But he said, so what does Joyce do differently in this one? He thinks by putting on the extra poundage, he's coming at 20 stone 1. He said, we know what Joe was going to do before he even done it. He said, so we come in at 20 stones 8. He said, so it was never going to be about the weight, and he was effectively right. And I think that what I was going on with, the only thing I had to go with the Joyce return fight, a repeat or revenge, was the fact that what can Joe do differently? Well, he can't do anything technically differently because that's what he does. What Joyce is the juggernaut, and that's exactly what he fights. So we saw the weight was the only thing that he could do differently.
But
the weight didn't work.
Sean George properly custard pied Adam Morley, didn't he?
Oh,
at that press conference, basically Adam Morley talked about what was going to happen in this fight, and he went, well, you don't know what you're talking about, or I think it was, you don't know about boxing.
Yeah, he said, in the words of Floyd Mayweather, if that's what you think, you know about boxing, because what he done, Adam Morley got up there and said, well, we thought the fight was turning around, and you know, after 6 rounds, had the fight continued, Joe, well, guess what? Joe was never going to win that first fight because Zhang had his number. He was sitting in the pocket, hitting him with the left hand, the right hooks over the top. And then Zhang worked it out straight away. He said, right, he's moving away from my left hand, so actually I'm going to nail him with a right hook, which is effectively what he'd done. I thought he'd done a great job, Zhang, but I've also showed the limitations, even more so, of Joe Joyce at that level, elite level. Because where does Zhang fit into the top? He fits into the top 4/5 now, heavyweights. You know, behind Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Alexander Usyk, Joshua, there's an argument for, and Zhang, or Filip Hrgović. He's there or thereabouts. Well, so he's in that elite level.
Well, Hrgović has beaten him, albeit.
Yeah, but did he beat him?
A lot of people. Well, on his record, he's beaten him.
Yeah, right? On his record. Yeah, that's right.
And you talk to Hrgović, and he will be adamant he's beaten him.
Yeah.
And I think most people, including those that were in Joe Joyce's corner, which is Frank Warren, albeit he'll have split loyalties now because he's got Zhang to potentially take an opportunity from.
Smart move by Frank, by the way.
Very smart.
Yeah.
And you know, you have to be an opportunist in life, don't you? And he was in the camp that Zhang had won that fight against Filip Hrgović. You look at Joe, and again going back to the fight itself, I mean, I thought Joe came in looking extremely focused. I spoke to Adam Morley before the fight, just on about 10-15 minutes before the main event, and they were very relaxed, very comfortable, felt very assured. I thought Joe looked very assured when he came in.
Yeah.
But when the fight started and you saw how much bigger Joe looked, the bigger man now. Yeah. Even though the weight was that Zhang was
still heavier.
Joyce looked the bigger fighter.
Yeah, sure.
But there was literally, I looked at the first round and I was sat with a couple of my friends and I went, well, they're not doing a lot. But in this round, it looks like Joe's going to his left as the adjustment that he's made.
Yeah, absolutely.
Zhang's going to work this out.
Yeah, of course.
And in the second round, what I saw from Zhang was complete and utter disrespect. He had no respect for Joe Joyce. It was almost like he looked at him and went, right, if that's all you're going to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch your head in.
Absolutely.
First opportunity I get.
And then basically that's what he'd done, because like after the first round, I went, Joe looks like he's adapted a little bit here, and this looks like this might be good moving forward. But then Zhang, second round, come out, like you say, no respect, went out there and just bulldozed him and just let the shots go. And Joe, from the second round, you knew then that this fight could be over quite quickly. He rocked him a lot, yeah. He rocked him, and the finish.
Joe gave him nothing to think about.
He can't. And that's the point. Because he can't. Joe Joyce can only do one thing. He's seen runs. Look. I think that we was going on in the first fight. I was coming at 18-2, and effectively that made him look more lethargic. The punch resistance had gone. If he comes in at heavier, like we was predicting, that's maybe his only choice, because his only chance, because we're thinking when Joe might be able to walk forward, take the shots, and then get off of his own and take Zhang into the second half of the fight where he come into his own. But it became evident very, very early that actually that weight made absolutely no difference at all. And without that, you know, what else can Joe do?
Well, this is it. I mean, I had thought there was a possibility that Joe's performance in the first fight had made Zhang look like a world beater, made him look better than he possibly was. And in the second fight, I felt that if there was a 10% bettering of Joe and a 10% drop-off of Zhang, you might see the swing that you saw in the Liam Smith, Chris Eubank Jr. fight, because conventional wisdom, all the orthodoxy said, Liam Smith will win this fight. Right? And Chris Eubank Jr. clearly did a different dynamic. And obviously at that time, a lot of questions will be asked about how competent or how good Liam Smith's performance was, because it was nowhere near the level. So I thought if we level it up with a drop, if Zhang has been given more credibility than he's entitled to, if Joe was having a bad night, underweight, and potentially he's got a few new tricks up his sleeve, then we might see that this fight goes a different way and it becomes a slightly more pick-em fight. But the moment the fight started, I mean, literally, it surprised me. Did it surprise you that he knocked him out? You know, you're coming to the end of the round. It's the first time Joe was actually preparing to engage a little bit more. Bang! He got pinged. He got pinged with a low jab, didn't he? And then bang with the right.
After a horrendous second round, I think Joe's gone, right now. I've got to roll the dice, and I'm going to have to start taking the fight to him. It was too one-dimensional. He was walking forward in straight lines, and like you say, it was the little left jab, or right jab to the body, and bang. Oh no, it was a left to the body. Sorry, and the right hook over the top, bang, and he set the trap. He done exactly what he had to do. He saw the opening. He thought, right. He showed that he's got a good boxing IQ, Zhang. Like, his feet are slow, but he's very smart. He took a round to work it out. And he showed that he is one of the elite heavyweights. I mean, you give him a chance in there because of his size, his speed, and his power. Take Fury out of the equation because I think that Fury's footwork would be too clever for him. But anyone that wants to stand with Zhang is in for a tough night. Yeah. I mean, interesting that I mentioned it on the night actually. They said, where does Zhang go from here? I said, you know what? Something like Anthony Joshua over in China. 200 million people watch that fight. It's a huge event. They've got history. But boxing the 2012 Olympics, in the quarterfinals, Anthony Joshua won that fight 15-11. It was a grueling fight. Zhang was on the floor as well. That would be a great rematch, like something like that. Eddie Hearn, interestingly, said that's something that they would explore. Yeah, it's something that they would be interested in.
Well, whatever Frank Warren says, Eddie Hearn will say the polar opposite of. Yeah. Right? And they're as bad as one another in this instance. Frank turned around and said they'll never take this fight. Yeah. Too much risk attached to it. Right. Whereas Eddie has now come back and says, I will have some of that.
Yeah, obviously AJ beat Zhang in the Olympics. It's a fight that we represented Zhang a few years ago. He's getting on now. I think he's in his 40s, but he's a big, dangerous heavyweight. Joe Joyce, you know, got well beaten at the weekend. And I think big fight in China, potentially. Zhang against Anthony Joshua. Of course, the talks continue for us with AJ against Wilder. It doesn't look like that fight's going to materialise till probably February or March now. So there is a chance that AJ fights in December as well, and he'd definitely be up for the Zhang fight.
Yeah. I've got that in my mind's eye, fighting at the Bird's Nest. And all that goes with it, I'm sure you have, because of the economics of it might suddenly become an opportunity for you. But for Joe Joyce, it does feel kind of like we're pulling the legs off a spider here now, because there was a point when we all, after the Joseph Parker fights, felt that Joe was on the right trajectory. Yeah. And we were part, the noise around Joe, we were part of the build-up in his mindset that he could take any punch that he wanted to. Yeah. All the previous build up to the Zhang fight was how much punishment he could take, and that was a badge of honour. Right? And we've now really, in all brutality, and I know it feels like the king is dead, long live the king, right? We saw the level of Joe Joyce, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. We all got sucked into that performance for Joseph Parker. Was a career best performance against Joseph Parker. When he won that, and he won it in style, you know. But the way he beat Parker's a good fighter as well. Shots were bouncing off him, and he slowly, systematically broke him down and knocked him out in that 11th round. And I thought that was when you come off the back of that, you're looking at that going, actually, if Joyce might be able to push them all here, like all of them, including Tyson Fury, because of his size and his engine, size and his brute strength and his engine. And now it's become evident that you go, hold on a minute, there's a little bit more to it than that. And we saw that on Saturday night against Zhang.
He's not going to get any better, is he?
Where does he go from here?
He's not going to get. I mean, the question, where does he go from here? I'm not surprised that Joe has said he's not going to retire. Yeah. Because ultimately, if Derek Chisora can make a living out of being competitive in fights, then so can Joe Joyce. But the reality of Joe Joyce getting to the top table and getting a world championship is probably quite remote now, isn't it?
Simon, that's a million miles away now. Like I say, with the landscape of the heavyweights and that top tier of heavyweights and what they're up to now, he needed that interim title to put himself in the mix, keep himself mandatory challenger for Alexander Usyk, and then we've got, I think, Filip Hrgović is next for Alexander Usyk, the IBF mandatory contender. Then he was next in line. So effectively, he could have gone there, had a couple of good fights, and sat it out. But now that's a million miles away.
Do you think he needed to be told? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I like Adam Morley a lot. I think he's a top-class operator. But do you think there's a possibility that besides his pride, and besides, I know it's a significant component part about the necessity to get back to being the mandatory for the WBO. Yeah. But do you think that he needed to be told properly by those that guided his career that taking the first fight was a risk that he didn't need to have taken? Yeah. He took it. The outcome wasn't great. That Zhang might have been his kryptonite for this stage in Joe's development. Do you think possibly someone should have really remonstrated with him and said, look, this is not, I know we're losing the WBO mandatory, because by losing this rematch, he's lost more than just a WBO mandatory slot. Absolutely. He's lost his positioning, full stop. Yeah, he's out 100%. Of conversation. He's not in the conversation, full stop. Yeah. And he's now
he's a million miles away. Million miles away. That's
so my point is, do you think, am I being unrealistic with that expectation?
No, absolutely not. I think that it was a bad decision in the first place to make the first fight with Zhang. Go on the basis of Zhang and Hrgović. That's right. Now you look at it and you go, Joyce has not really got any experience with southpaws at that sort of level, and he's been vocal about that after this defeat as well. He talks about it, and you think, where was the thinking behind it when Zhang is so dangerous when anyone sits in the pocket of him. And Joe Joyce has got no feet. He can't move backwards. That's what he does. And you go, that's a massive gamble, that. And then obviously we were vocal about it afterwards, saying, listen, forget the rematch.
Which is the point I made, and it's the first time I've seen Joe actually get irritated by something, because he's the most personable and placid of individuals outside of the ring. And I said to him, I remember Frank sitting next to him, and I remember saying, I really don't like this fight for you.
Yeah.
This is a really difficult fight. And Joe was like, you think I don't know that? And that's the first time I've seen him get his irritation. But we saw what we saw. Where does he go? Where does he go next? I mean, the inference is a potential rematch against Daniel Dubois.
Yeah.
Now I can see that serving Joe Joyce very well, because if Joe, and we talk about Joe Joyce being a mile away from getting a shot again. He's 38. Zhang's 40.
Yeah.
You know, he can go away and rebuild for 2 years and still be fighting at 40 because he's fit, Joe.
But at that stage of your career, though, some fighters have that longevity, like who's a classic example, George Foreman, come back at 45 years of age and done what he'd done. But other fighters you see deteriorating younger. So it depends on the individual.
What mileage you've got on the clock,
exactly, it depends what.
I mean, this is the first time. Obviously, we know that Joe's taken a lot of punishment. None of it's affected him at all. And in recent times, Joe has been quite happy to talk about it in the terms of he likes taking the punishment. In this instance, what you've got is real damage done to him. Do you think there was any less in his punch resistance?
No, absolutely. Listen, and I think there was a little bit. No, I think there was a little bit in his punch resistance before.
Because of the weight.
But yeah, I know. No, I put it down to the weight. Then what I saw, but then what I saw there, I go, perhaps he's not holding on to shots as good as what he was. And people are going to look at this and go, well, he's only had 16 fights now. There's not a lot of wear and tear in the clock. Guess what? It's all done in the gym. Joe Joyce obviously spars like he fights. He takes a lot of punishment. So there's a lot of wear and tear, much more than what happens in the actual fight. People must recognise that. And I think that I've looked at Joe in his last couple of fights. When you look at the fight before that, when you look at the Parker one, when we were all going, well, this could be the main one, but he took a lot of punishment. And the wear and tear happens, and I'm concerned that may be it. I mean, if you look at where does Joe Joyce go now, if you go Daniel Dubois, and if that fight, that's the perfect fight for both of them, really. Dubois coming off the Usyk loss. But then if you look otherwise, you go, where does he go? You're talking about dropping down to Fabio Wardley level, like British title level. Well, where else would he go? What I'm saying is that this is where he's sat now, gone from being an elite. You go to the rebuilding process. You know, you're looking at David Adelaide and Fabio Wardley, those sort of fights where the young guns that are coming through, or the Daniel Dubois one.
Yeah,
where you go
because that's got a narrative behind it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you see Daniel wanting to take that fight? It seems to me that Daniel comes away, albeit with questions from us about the reasons why he didn't leap on Usyk and the reasons why he didn't pull himself off the canvas in the 9th round and bite down his gum shield. Those questions will perhaps have to be answered in later performances. But he comes away from that fight with all the controversy of a potential low blow not being a low blow that might have won him the world title. So he comes away with credibility in the eyes and minds. Can you see him wanting to fight Joe Joyce, to help Joe Joyce with his redemption?
Well, I think that it would sort of help him as well, really, because they're both in a situation where he's coming off the loss to Usyk. Where does he go? He'll now be looking at Joe Joyce going, I think he's gone a little bit here, and this will be good for me because I can right the wrongs of the last contest, reverse that loss, which effectively puts him back in the ladder again as well. So, look, I think for both guys, it makes sense because of where they're at in their careers. More so for Daniel Dubois because he can reverse that loss that he had against Joe Joyce.
Really?
I mean,
More so for Daniel Dubois. Zhang, I mean, we've touched upon it lightly, and we don't need to go into too much detail to the opportunities that he has, but he's now a genuine challenger for a world title.
Yes.
He's now in the slot for once Usyk fights Hrgovic, which is the next call, isn't it, the IBF?
Yep.
He's the next cab off the rank for the WBO.
Yes.
He won't be stepping aside, so unless the undisputed happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the order of events should be, if I'm right, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Hrgovic versus Usyk sooner rather than later. Yeah.
And unless, like you say, the undisputed then obviously trumps all of that.
And then if Frank is to be believed,
if
Frank is to be believed, that this farce in Riyadh that's going to open the door for meaningful boxing events, then the meaningful boxing event should necessarily be either, well, under Frank's jurisdiction, it has to be Fury versus Usyk for the undisputed, doesn't it? That's what we've been led to believe is the reasons. Besides the big bag of money that Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury are going to get, the actual relationship that's been developed by Frank Warren behind the scenes with the Saudis opens the door to the big fight. So what I'm saying is the next one, if they call an undisputed, that will trump the opportunity for Zhilei Zhang to be the WBO next fight off the rank in terms of the mandatory for that.
So that's exactly where you're at with that. So you go, where does Zhilei Zhang go? Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder has been talked about. That doesn't look likely to happen this year now. Anthony Joshua wants to box in December. Big fights out there, makes sense.
Zhang would take it though, wouldn't he?
Huh?
Zhang would take Joshua, wouldn't he?
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. So if you're talking about a December fight, Eddie Hearn's done this new deal now in Japan, 3-year deal in Japan, 3 fights a year over there. So he's looking at that Asian market.
Yeah.
Well, that's a huge fight.
China and Japan are 2 different countries, just because you don't know, part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, look, there's a huge fight over there in that part of the world.
When you look at that fight, can you see, it's all good, all the bravado and the braggadocio of promoters saying that there's this and that and the other. Can you see that's a fight that Anthony Joshua would be advised to take?
Yeah.
You do?
I do.
Is that because you're part of his fan club? Or is it
No,
because you genuinely
I just genuinely think when we're looking at it,
he
comes with a load of credibility now, Zhang, coming off the back of them 2 wins. And you're looking at that and you go, right, if the Deontay Wilder fight doesn't happen next for Anthony Joshua, which I'm very doubtful it does, Zhilei Zhang, history with these two in the Olympics. It was a tough fight for Joshua back then, but it's also a chance.
Joshua back then.
It's also a chance for Joshua to get the WBO interim title, mandatory position. Why not? We're at this stage of your career. You can't just keep having fights.
Why not? Because you're managing risk. Let's have it right.
but Simon, they're at that stage of their career. They're not getting younger, these guys. We need to. They need to have these sort of fights. Zhilei Zhang really should be the next one on the list for Anthony Joshua when you're going down the pecking order. If you can't get the Deontay Wilder fight and Usyk and Fury are doing their things, Zhilei Zhang's the next man, and I think Joshua gets credibility from that.
In that fight, I'm assuming you pick Joshua to win that fight. I need to ask the question?
Yeah, I do.
Throw your voice.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
No, it's just the way that you looked at me when you said that.
Knowing the answer.
I do pick Joshua to win that fight. Yeah.
I tell you what was fascinating the other day, and was that I had a conversation with Malik Scott in a different setting, who was Deontay Wilder's trainer, and he gives you a very compelling view of Deontay Wilder.
Yeah.
And the more I look at Wilder, I've always been incredibly disrespectful of Wilder, not disrespectful, but very judgmental about the ineptitude of his technical ability.
Absolutely, yeah.
But this guy, Malik Scott, gave me a very interesting insight and kaleidoscopic view of Wilder. And when you look at some of, I know that the opposition may not have been up to some of the standards that we are alleging some of the other fighters have been at. But when you look at Wilder and you look at some of the punches that he throws against Stavern and people like that, if this guy's in that mood still, I still think that's a phenomenal fight with Joshua.
Absolutely.
Phenomenal fight. That's the fight I'd prefer.
Simon, where would you, as a boxing fan, we would all prefer Joshua Wilder, of course we would. But if you was looking after Anthony Joshua, where would you want to go next? Deontay Wilder or Zhilei Zhang? With what Zhang's got, by the way, Zhang's got something that Deontay Wilder hasn't.
We've said, he's got a mandatory position.
Yeah.
We have said that there's no more necessity for Anthony Joshua to piss ball about.
Yeah.
He needs to get in with Deontay Wilder. There's this idea that you're going to get rid of the cobwebs, get rid of the lack of engagement or the preparedness to get in range. It's now or never. Right. So we've said this. Now we're saying we'll take another kind of. But Zhang's not an interim.
He's not. Zhang's coming with something now. That's why I asked. That's why I asked the question.
I think both of them will be interesting, and both of them carry huge jeopardy. Anthony Yard. Nice to see him back, one of my favourite fighters.
Love Anthony Yard. You know what? He's a lovely human being. He's misunderstood, actually, Anthony Yard.
Well, I think he is, I think he's a really personable, nice fellow.
Yeah, he is.
I think people take the ring persona and they superimpose it into the bloke.
That's right.
Whereas he's a very nice bloke.
He's a very
Not
genuine
sure about
guy.
The hair.
Huh?
Not sure about the hair.
Well, you know.
What do you think about
who am I to judge on hair?
Well, this is it,
You know?
Very true. Hair that smells of your own bum.
What's Pat laughing at?
That's true. But he 2-round demolition.
Yeah, listen, he done what he done. He went out there and he showed that he's a world-class operator, and that's exactly what he needed. He needed to get back into on the winning ways. Listen, I spoke to him. I interviewed him actually on the Thursday and asked him, where he was looking at going. Yeah. Was he looking for the winner of Joshua Beats Zhang, October the 21st? Yeah. Was that his intention? Does he want? He said, listen, ultimately, I want a world title shot. I want to mix it up there with them guys. Of course, if
Bivens not fighting yet, is he?
Say again?
Bivens not out yet, is he?
No, Bivens not out yet. We don't know what Bivens doing at the moment.
I think Eddie was talking about him being out sometime at the back end of this year, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he said whatever comes up, if I get a world title shot, that's what I want. But he said he's very interestingly, at fighting Joshua Beats. He said it's a fight that's always been built between us two. And that's the fight that he really wants. That's the one that gets him going.
Well, of course. I mean, he's for Josh Beats, it's an interesting one to see if he wants to take that fight, because it's all well and good. Anthony Yarde's had 2 tilts at a world title. Beats, and on his way to that world title shots with the interloper being Lyndon Arthur, where he put in a poor performance during COVID and then went back and demolished Lyndon Arthur, who, by the way, did brilliantly the other day to win a belt himself, didn't he?
Did.
Did he win the IBO?
It was a tough fight for him, and he done well. And it shows what a class operator Lyndon Arthur is, and the way that Anthony Yarde dealt with Arthur in the second fight, you just go, shows the levels,
Demolished him.
Anthony Yarde's one of them fighters that's learning on the job. He had no amateur experience, he had a couple of small fights on Queensbury Boxing.
Yeah, but he's ferocious. He's what people go and see fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And talking about that, I'm going to pivot into someone that people liked to have watched, may not like so much, maybe they will, which is obviously the much heralded return of Conor Benn to the ring. I didn't watch the fight.
I did. This morning.
I've seen clips of it. I didn't watch it because I'm not a hypocrite.
I watched it this morning.
I don't support this situation, so I'm not subsequent to what I know. That makes me unable to comment on the performance. But what were your first thoughts about the fact that with it 4 days and he was shoehorned into a fight by his promoter that tells everyone that he's cleared, that doesn't want to put him on a bill in London because clearly he isn't cleared?
Yeah, exactly.
What did you make of it?
Look, I think we've both been very vocal about this, and the stance that I take on this is exactly the same. I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy that they worked it so that he could box over there in Orlando. I think that he needs to face the consequences here with the British Boxing Board of Control. Stop throwing all those narratives out that he's been cleared, etc., because he hasn't been cleared. Jurisdiction lifted the ban, but he's still not proved his innocence, and that's where I'm at with it, and that's where I stand with it right now. I didn't want to see him fighting before he proved that innocence. Now he has fought.
What was your takeaway? I mean, obviously,
what was that, right?
Obviously, I mean, it feels like it almost feels like every time we talk about this subject, we've got to put a trigger warning in there, or a qualification, because people say, "Oh, you're obsessed." The only reason we're talking about Conor Benn is because he fell a fault on Saturday night. Because I'm quite happy to leave this subject alone, and hopefully boxing will do the right thing with it, and Robert Smith and the British Boxing Board of Control will do what they've got to do. And there'll be the fascinating thing with this, with Conor Benn, is if they do put the question, if the British Boxing Board of Control's appeal is turned down, they've got a fascinating question coming their way, which is, what are they prepared to do with Conor Benn? Are they prepared to give him his licence back?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
And perhaps they might not be asked that question, because he might fight on an American licence or a licence of some shape or form from another commission that gives him an opportunity to fight in his country, somewhat similar to Tyson Fury, and get licensed on a fight-by-fight basis. Sure. And then you've got the British Boxing Board of Control doing one of two things: either refusing to licence him in this country, or having a problem with anybody else that's got a British Boxing Board of Control licence that fights him in any other jurisdiction. Sure. So those are interesting landscapes. When you look at Conor, and you've seen the fight, I've seen the stills, and I've seen a little bit of some of the clips. What did you make to him? He was fighting someone that doesn't come with any great reputation, albeit sort of quite a long record and quite a decent amount of wins on that record.
With no one with any resume on that record, so it was always going to be one of those fights where you thought,
which is reasonable.
It's understandable, because he's been out for like 17 months. And I go, what did I make of the performance? Well, I think he showed great composure. Shot selection was good. He took his chances when he had to. Good uppercuts on the inside, working well, taking his time. I thought overall it was a good performance. Punch power wasn't there. At 154. You could clearly see that the other guy looked much bigger. So what does that tell you?
Because people were making snide comments, weren't they? Yeah. About the punch power not being there.
I just think
he's up to 154.
That is the problem, where he's up to 154. So this, what it tells me about Conor is that overall, I thought it was a good performance. It was a workmanlike performance. He got the job done, and he got the 10 rounds under his belt. Where do I see him sitting? Is that he needs to go back down to 147, because that's where That's his optimum weight. That's where he's most effective. Going up to 154, the other guy looked much bigger. The punch power wasn't there at that weight. So when you're talking about going up to 160 to box Eubank, you go, well, now looking at that at 154, you go, well, that's crazy. Because Eubank would be way too big. You've got to remember, Eubank's coming down. If you're going up to 160, Eubank would be coming down from 175.
But that's what we've always said, though. I mean, obviously there was the muddying of the water when he was coming down to 157. And, of course, Chris Eubank Sr. got involved and talked about the potential legalised murder of his son. And other people talking about the circumstances of Chris Eubank boiling himself down. And we saw him looking moderate, I wouldn't say emaciated, but looking, you know, very, very thin and very, very stripped.
He looked
beyond
terrible.
Stripped, didn't he? Yeah.
He looked terrible.
Do you?
He looked absolutely terrible. Like, one thing I'm pretty sure of, had that fight gone ahead the first time, I think that there could have been serious consequences. I really do. And that would not have been in the favour of Chris Eubank Jr.
We now know, because all of us have been proven to be wrong, right? We all said Eubank Jr. cannot fight at 160 against Liam Smith, because if he fights at 160 against Liam Smith, he'll get done. He can only fight at 168. He's now proven he can fight at 160. Albeit we saw a shadow of the Liam Smith that we saw in the first fight. So with that in mind, Eddie Hearn's spoken about a fight being made on the 23rd of December. And a big offer being made to Eubank. And to interesting observations there about Boxer trying to get in the mix. I think Boxer are going to have some response. I think they put a press statement out, didn't they, saying that there was no approach to Chris Eubank.
Well, Eddie Hearn said that they had approached to promote that fight, to get that fight, which I think Ben Shalomi's denying. So.
I think they have denied that, and said that that wasn't the case. But
well, do you know anything different?
Well, I asked Ben. I asked him and said to him, is there any substance in this? About the fight. I know that they probably would like to have a relationship with Eubank. Because he's out of contract with Galley.
Eubank's a free agent.
There's a difference between having a conversation with Chris Eubank about the potential of promoting him and being the promoter that promotes the Eubank versus Ben fight. They're two different things. And it's very easy to conflate, which certain people do. They misrepresent and turn something into something that it's not. But, you know, Chris is talking about fighting at 160. Conor Benn is suggesting he'll fight at 160.
But if not, he'll go to 147.
What do you think is going to play? Do you sense, Spence? Because I'm biased. I don't want to watch this fight. I don't admire what's happened in the last 18 months. It's none of my business really, but I'm very fascinated by boxing. We do these shows. As you well know, there's a distinct possibility in a certain capacity I'm about to get involved in boxing. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it more than I enjoyed football. But if boxing doesn't want to clean its act up, that's up to boxing. Every time I get asked a question about Conor Benn, I can't help but say the same thing. And everyone goes, obsessed, agenda. I can't change my opinion because nothing's changed. The circumstances are what they are.
I'm with you on that, and that's exactly what it is. We're talking
what do you think the public thinks? You and I, the self-righteous duo.
Right. No.
But what about the public?
Well, listen, I'm glad you asked the question, because I think the public thinks the same because of the PR that was behind this and the mess that it is up until this day, and with the situation being the situation, people still knowing that he's cleared his name to box, but he's not cleared his name with the 2 failed tests. And I think it's because it's become so public. That's why the public have turned against Conor Benn.
It's
and this
interesting
whole
that
situation.
you made the point. Conor made the point the other day. I'm British and I should be able. I want to fight on these shores. It's interesting because there's going to be. There is an interesting confrontation coming, because unless he does clear his name, I said it on Saturday night to Gareth A. Davis, who I was trying to avoid like the plague and couldn't because he was every time I sat around, he was sitting next to me. I don't know who let him in that section. And people can turn it into whatever they want to about my particular relationship with Eddie. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about this one instance. I've always maintained that Eddie Hearn was one of the best promoters. He paid his fighters promptly. He never mucked anybody about. But on this one, with Conor Benn, this is a stain on boxing.
I agree.
And I do think that Conor puts himself in the way of a significant proportion. People forget things. They forgot what Tyson Fury did. Tyson Fury got a ban.
But it wasn't handled this way, Simon. That's the problem.
But let's be fair to the examples. Tyson Fury got a ban and he wasn't even fighting. So let's
absolutely,
right. And then talked about wild boar meat being the reasons why he had Nangelo in the system. You know, you've got Povetkin, you've got Canelo Alvarez, but people have forgotten it. The problem with this situation, and the reasons why I think this is a worse problem for Conor Benn, is the way it's been handled. And those that are around him that purport to care for him, turn around and say to me, when I argue with them about having a contract, they should have cancelled the fight, they say they didn't have a contract, and then a week ago on another radio show, they tell me that they tell Andy Goldstein they've had a contract with the same fighter for a year. Which one is it? But the point is that unless Conor clears his name, he is always going to have a section. Maybe it will diminish over time because people forget that look at it and go, not for me. And that will include commercial endorsements.
Yeah.
That will include supporter recognition. And whatever else we can think of makes up an opportunity for a fighter to monetize himself properly.
Absolutely.
And it's a tragedy.
Well, I think that's why I think the best thing for him to do now, he's had that comeback fight, he's done that. He passed all the tests, by the way, in the build-up to this fight. That's fine, that's great. Now you need to go back and you need to face the British Boxing Board of Control. But is the damage been done, Simon? And that's the problem. Can he reverse that?
He can't. What can he do now? He's doubled down, called everybody every single name under
the
sun.
That's the problem.
Reports that no one's seen the light of day. We've listened to that Wally over at Matchroom telling you that the builders shouldn't look at the report. Nobody wants the builders to look at the report. They want the British Boxing Board of Control and UK to look at the report you produced. You're
talking about Frank Smith there, right?
I mean, telling people that they shouldn't be able to see a report. British, builders and people that work in such environments.
That was a poor interview, to be fair.
It's ridiculous.
It was
silly,
a poor
gormless.
interview.
Go make some tea. You've been told before. Wait outside in the car. But the point is this: is that I do feel that he can't now change the direction because he's kind of got to tell.
So what does he do? Deal with it? Has he just got to accept the fact that he is now the enemy in the public's eyes?
Well, I think he has to accept the fact that the British Boxing Board. He must pray that the British Boxing Board of Control appeal isn't successful. Yeah. Because if it's successful and they cut away the jurisdiction, then he has a real wealth of problems. And the wealth of problems go beyond what he's prepared to do. It's what they're prepared to do to other fighters that have got British Boxing Board of Control license, what other trainers they've got, what other sparring partners, because everybody's in the eye of a storm then, because no one can legitimately fight Conor Benn and the British Boxing Board of Control will not sanction it. But look,
this situation has become much bigger than Conor Benn now, though, isn't it? With the Boxing Board of Control, the way they're going to handle things moving forward, etc.
Well, they need to get better, and they need to get bolder, they need to get stronger, they need to get more professional. You know, you've seen a TV show last week alleging racism against the British Boxing Board of Control. I didn't particularly like the way Eddie tried to weaponise that.
I've got to tell you, by the way, that what a load of rubbish that is. I've got to say that. You know, I don't agree with it at all.
I've discussed it in a different format. Yeah. You look at the referees that are being considered, certainly Ian. And his performances that have come under question.
We're talking about Ian John Lewis here, the referee.
John Lewis, I don't think he was taken out because he was a black man. I think he was taken out because his performances weren't good enough. I think the Asian fighter, the woman Asian fighter that wore leggings and then said that ultimately the British Boxing Board of Control were unpleasant to her because she's wearing leggings and were racist, had a photo shoot done in shorts. So there was nothing to do with religion.
Really?
So it's all a bit silly, but the fact that Eddie weaponised it makes me feel that's going to be an argument that he's going to advance in a different conversation if the outcome for Conor Benn doesn't quite go the way he wants it to.
Yeah,
we will see. We will see. Yeah. All I really want, and all we always want, and we keep saying it because we feel like we've got to say it because it feels like people saying, you've got an agenda, is I just want Conor Benn to get himself together.
Absolutely.
Find his way through this. I'd love those bloody doctors that came on the show that said they had the medical evidence to prove that ultimately he couldn't have taken it through drugs. Yeah. I'd love those guys to get a hearing, although you listen to people like Thomas Hauser and Victor Conti that turn around and say, nonsense. Yeah. That medical evidence is a very limited scale and complete nonsense. Anyway, you and I will run out of steam with this somewhere along the line, won't we? Big fight coming up. Last part of the show, big fight coming up. Yeah. Canelo Alvarez again.
Yeah, Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo this Saturday. Looking forward to it, actually. This is a good fight. Undisputed 154 against the undisputed 168 in Canelo Alvarez. Charlo's a good fighter, you know. Like, don't underestimate the fact that he's the world.
When was the last time he fought?
He hasn't fought for a while now. He's been out for a while, but don't underestimate that. This guy, he's got great shot selection. He's 6 foot tall. Canelo Alvarez is 5'8". So what I'm saying is, he will be comfortable fighting at 168.
He's fought bigger fighters. Caleb Plant was a big lump.
Absolutely.
Fighter, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I think Charlo though is great. He's especially effective with his right hand. He throws shots. He's good at long range and he's good inside as well at short range. But I think if you're showing a blueprint on how to beat Canelo Alvarez, Dimitri Bivol done that when he kept him at range with everything. So has he got the power?
That was light heavy,
absolutely. That's the $1 million question. Yeah. What I'm saying though is it's a good fight. Alvarez, yes, starts the favourite, but Charlo's a good fighter. I think Alvarez wins.
By what?
By points. Yeah, I think he wins on points. Yeah, goes the distance. I think he just outworks him, outmuscles him. Alvarez, as we've seen, as he's got older, and he maybe his best days may be past him now, and that's what the Charlo. That's where you give Charlo a chance, because Charlo may be just a fresher of the two. He may get those combinations off, but the $1 million question for Charlo is, can he keep Alvarez off for 12 rounds? And my thinking behind that is no. I think Alvarez will outman him.
Enough not to get knocked out, but not enough to win.
Yeah, enough to not get knocked out, but not enough to win.
Right, that's it for episode 42 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan Spencer Oliver. As instructed by the producer, don't forget to keep liking and subscribing the videos. Keep leaving the questions in the comment section below. And myself and him over there, we'll see you next time out.